Sunday, round 12 of 24, and we head to the track where the Formula One World Championship got underway 1,112 races ago. That is the view looking down on this glorious former airfield, now brilliant racetrack. It's the fifth longest in the calendar, 3.6 miles long, 18 corners, 8 to the left and 10 to the right, and just 4 braking events. A top speed of 216 miles an hour. It is very much a track for the brave with some of the greatest corners on the calendar, and it's raining, or it has been raining pretty much since the last 10 minutes of FP2 yesterday, so we might just need those intermediates, and the wet weather tyres certainly enters at the start of this session. Soft, medium, hard, C3, C2, C1 hardest tyres in the Pirelli range. And well done to the fans that have made it here to this track on the Buckinghamshire-Northamptonshire border. They're all smiles, and they should be pretty pleased with their efforts. It is a perishing cold day, Karun Chandok. Just what we've come to expect from the British Grand Prix. Do you know what? To make this race even better than it is already, they should have it in the summertime. Why do we always have it in the winter?
It feels like it, doesn't it? 11 degrees at the moment, which is especially like being at a Barcelona pre-season test day. But anyway, listen, enough about the weather. We could go on about it all day long here in England.
Well, let's say weather and put it into perspective of what we're about to see. In the bottom right-hand corner of your screen there is Stowe Corner, Hangar Straight before that. It's a headwind, and a stiff headwind as well, into the Hangar Straight. Risk of rain officially 80%. I don't think the track's going to dry out much, if at all, during this session, as Lando Norris makes his way into the garage. For the first time in his Formula One career, he topped both Friday practice sessions yesterday, and his lap time in FP2 of a 1:26.549, quicker than the fastest lap of the entire British Grand Prix weekend last year. Second time that the McLarens have been 1-2 in a practice session, following on from FP3 in Imola. But how do conditions now change things around for the teams today?
So, well, there's a couple of things in play here. A, it's rained a lot overnight. We had even thunder and lightning at about 3 o'clock in the morning overnight. A lot of rain has washed away any of the rubber laid down yesterday. We still think the forecast for tomorrow is reasonable. So what happens, for those of you who haven't seen a full weekend before, is that before qualifying, the teams and drivers have to choose the setup of the car that they're going to carry into the Grand Prix. They go into what's known as Parc Fermé, where they're not allowed to change the car. So while today is wet, and there's a high chance that qualifying could be wet, you have to make sure that you don't change the car too much for the wet conditions, because then you will be in trouble in the Grand Prix tomorrow, which is where ultimately the points are paid. What
you need is a driver then that is equally as good in the wet as he is in drying conditions and dry conditions as well. Good morning, Jenson Button.
Good morning.
That was the cheesiest segue into you ever.
Did you mean me though, or not?
Did mean
okay, good. Well, I'm also the only one that has wet experience so far. Oh no, they drove, didn't they, yesterday in the wet a little bit? But I drove in the wet yesterday as well, and it was it's quite sketchy out there. It's a little bit slippery when it's wet, but no, I think they're going to be shocked at how low the grip is today, especially with the amount of standing water there is out there.
It wasn't as wet as 2008 when you were the fastest man on the track before you started aquaplaning.
And put it in the gravel, yeah. Thanks for that.
Sorry. You were the fastest man at the time. Yeah, sorry, Ted. I wasn't trying to be insulting to Jenson there. He was very, very quick and then hit a puddle and couldn't do anything about it. How's it in the pit lane, Mr. Kravitz?
Hello, Crofty. Hello, Karun. Hello, Jenson. Hello, everybody. You know, on a day like today, you like to think you might be in Italy on the Italian Riviera, or maybe in the Puglia or Tuscany or somewhere hot. That's the vibes I'm getting from Ferrari. The star of the Silverstone weekend so far seems to be Leo Leclerc de Saint-Mure, Charles Leclerc's dog, who is here at Silverstone and attracting all sorts of attention. But it's attention of a different kind that I'm interested in. We've heard from Ferrari, we've heard earlier in the weekend, but we haven't heard where their pace is. We know more or less where Red Bull is, where McLaren is, where Mercedes is. And on the balance of yesterday, it wasn't looking too optimistic for Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, his teammate. But they tell me that they've done quite a lot of work overnight and are optimistic about their pace in these conditions. We have our first runner, and it's car number 20, Crofty, which, of course, you me and everybody knows, is Kevin Magnussen on the intermediate tyre, quickly followed by his teammate Nico Hülkenberg, who loves these kind of conditions. So we are going to get some runners nice and early. What can Ferrari do? They have some way to catch up to the others.
They do.
I popped into Haas this morning, Crofty, because Nico Hülkenberg was a standout yesterday, wasn't he? Brilliant, brilliant run in FP2. And you know, they brought, we know, a whole load of upgrades to this weekend. This is their sort of home race where one part of the team is based. Nico didn't run the upgrades in the morning, put it on for the afternoon session and found a good chunk of performance. So he was very positive about that. Kevin Magnussen, though, on the flip side, wasn't very complimentary. Didn't find a happy balance with the upgraded car. But the team are sticking with it, and they're going to hope to dial something in. But in these conditions, that's a nightmare for him because you're going to get no reference in terms of the setup.
Shades of last season a bit on that when both drivers thought different things when upgrades came to the track. Jensen, you use the word sketchy. I'll add twitchy and a bit leery to that as well.
Yeah, he's obviously got cold tyres, but look at it. Even through cops, he's got rear movement, and this is a car that produces unbelievable amounts of downforce, ground effects. You wouldn't expect to see the rear stepping out through a high-speed corner. So, yeah, it is tough out there, but they do need to do some laps, though. They need to get a feel for it because there's every chance that tomorrow in the race we will have rain.
Scattered thunderstorms. I looked at the weather forecast for tomorrow. Said showers might turn into hail. I'm not sure we've ever had hail. Might have had snow here once upon a time. But the weather today, it's meant to be drizzly and showery right up until the start of qualifying. And by the way, if you want to know what it's like to go out in the wet with Jensen in his old Williams around Silverstone, that feature's coming your way after this FP1 session, as Kevin Magnussen finds that stopping, FP3 session I should say, finds that stopping isn't the easiest thing on the planet. Charles Leclerc comes out into the pit lane after we were just watching the family of Ayu Komatsu in the Haas garage. See, the best thing about being team principal, you get to bring your family to the racetrack for your home Grand Prix and no one can stop you.
You get more passes, don't you?
You do. It's good. I don't know if this is the Italian Riviera. Silverstone's more like Venice today, to be honest. It is.
I bet it's warmer
cold,
in Venice, Crofty.
I don't know. It's chilly by the shores.
Yes. Yeah, and I think this is, important for the drivers to go out and get a feel on these intermediate times because they could be qualifying in these sort of similar conditions. So I think they've got to get a feel for it. And actually, Jensen, this is one of the tracks where the wet lines are quite different to the dry lines, isn't it? Yeah. You often can find grip by running around the outside of corners, which isn't always the case at some other circuits.
These days, no, with the cars having so much grip, but it's such a low grip track, which is surprising because these cars are running so much downforce in these conditions. But you see them twitching around a lot, and that's why they're having to take wet lines. I mean, look at Max there. I know he's just come out of the pits, but these tyres have come out of blankets, so they are warm when they start out of the pits. But it's very twitchy, and it's just a sudden snap that he's getting everywhere.
Well, actually, you've got to come out of the pits and start pushing on straight away because the temperature drops with these with the intermediate tyres. Track only 16 degrees at the moment.
Plenty of drivers out on the track. In fact, Lewis Hamilton, when he gets onto the track, will make it 20 drivers out there currently. So if you want to ride on board with any of them, you can do so. You need that little QR code to help you there, or your Sky app. Log on with your Sky ID. We have got every single on board, plus the team radio too. And if you're watching on Sky Stream, Sky Q, Sky Glass, or now, use the interactive button on your remote control as Max weaving from side to side to get some temperature in, and he probably weaved a bit too much.
Not sure that was
into cops.
I don't think that was a weave.
Let's have a look on board. This is down into Brooklands.
Yeah, I mean, it's staggering how how low the grip is. The problem is you have to push hard to get tyre temperature, but in pushing hard, that happens.
Yeah. Well, Yuki Tsunoda yesterday just got on the power a little bit too early in FP1. But it was a bit drier than this. Found himself in the gravel and caused a red flag. Last thing you want to do is to be going off into the gravel and doing that this morning. This is Charles Leclerc.
Also, watch this, Crofty. These white lines are going over the old grid boxes there through Woodcote Corner. They can all have a small effect just on the grip level there. Leclerc getting a snap just at the apex of cops, and bouncing over that curve. And that curve is pretty vicious.
Yeah.
I cycled around that bit of the track with my son the other night, and just having a look at the curve, it's quite big. You know, when you go through there with a fully loaded car, the downforce pushes the car down into the ground, and that curve can do some damage to the floor if you hit it too hard.
So you are right about the white lines. So the pit boxes here and obviously the old pit boxes before Copse. Yesterday when I was driving, you could feel every single one of them. So you got a tiny bit of wheel spin every time you went over them. There's also white lines in between, in Beckett's as you go around the right, the last right before the left, which makes the rear step out as well. So yeah, it's not nice for them out there at the moment.
Isn't it funny? For 20 years, the FIA have been saying how they've got this anti-slip paint, and it will be the exact same grip as the tarmac. Yeah, any racing driver who's actually driven it can tell you it's not.
But a lot of the time in the wet, you do find grip immediately, and the asphalt just works with the tyre. But here it just doesn't seem to, and I think it is because it is only 16 degrees, the track temp.
Yeah. How difficult is it for the drivers then, on a track where you say you can find different lines today in the wet, to actually work out what those different lines should be? Because they'll all be dialed in to the dry running from yesterday.
As soon as they feel the grip like it is, and they're all having twitches, high-speed, low-speed corners, as soon as that happens, you go immediately to the old-school karting lines in the wet. So entering the corner, you'll run wide, and sometimes you'll just run around the whole outside of the corner.
The track is wetter than expected, but it's going to improve quickly. All the cars on track.
Pierre Gasly has stopped at the Vale chicane. That's why you're seeing a yellow flag come up. I wonder if he's gone off into the gravel down there as George Russell approaches Stowe. And I think Gasly is stuck on the outside of that Vale chicane. That's why we've got a red flag. He's had a spin, and I think he's gone backwards. There he is, stranded in the gravel. I'm afraid he certainly is. Gasly starting the British Grand Prix at the back of the field after taking new engine power unit components outside of his allocation. He is not going to get any running after this on this wet Saturday at Silverstone. Such a slow corner and such an easy place to run off in these conditions.
He also, I don't even think he touched the white line on the curb there. It was just a lack of grip. It would be interesting, because they're obviously all on intermediates at the moment, it'd be interesting if somebody actually ran wets, because you might turn the tyre on, you got bigger blocks on the wet tyre, you get a bit of movement in them and you get more temperature, whereas I just don't think they're getting these up to temperature, the Inters.
I think you're right.
I think he's just snatched the rear tyres.
Let's have a look. Out of Stowe we go.
Look how slow he's going.
And one thing that, we were saying before is the wet line sometimes braking as well. You brake in the middle of the road, which he isn't doing here. He's braking the normal line, and the rears are just locked up on him. And just, it's a horrible feeling as a driver. You just got no way of stopping that slide. It's very much a symptom of low tyre temp, I think.
Totally.
And the rain's coming in 4 minutes, which actually might help the choice. And put them onto the wet weather tyres.
Someone has to try a wet, just to see if they can get the car working, because this is pointless running.
Charles Leclerc had the experience going over the curb and sliding onto what, fortunately for him, was a bit more tarmac on the outside.
This is such a difficult corner, the last corner here. We're talking about the white lines. You're trying to get on the throttle there, and every time you go over that white line, you get a little snap.
So, nearly 10 minutes gone, and the first red flag of the morning, and it's because Pierre Gasly has gone off into the gravel, didn't set a time. Yuki Tsunoda has done 4 laps, so far as the fastest, but with a 1:47.0, it's tricky out there. So the marshal's quickly on the scene, as you would expect, and Pierre Gasly's walking back, and he's very near the entry to the pit lane. Can they get the car under a red flag back into the pit lane from there, I wonder, and give it a push down and get it back into the garage?
If I was Pierre Gasly, I would have stuck around there and just fought and lobbied the marshals and argued for them to bring the car this way, because what they've tended to do actually is recover the cars behind that's the podium he's walking through, and they tend to drop it off just behind the podium, actually right by the sky pad. That's where they dropped Yuki Tsunoda's car yesterday. So, but if I was him, I'd be back, standing back battling to get it into the pit lane.
Maybe he doesn't want to drive it anymore in these conditions.
It's too cold. And this is trying to get into the pit lane. How many stabs of the wheel did Daniel Ricciardo give that?
But that
Is that
doesn't do
weaving
anything.
as
Doesn't
well?
actually do anything at that speed, because as soon as you stop doing it, the temperature drops on the wet surface.
That doesn't do it, unless he's checking the steering for an issue or
maybe.
something. But
Sorry,
you did
Daniel,
that
if you are.
Are you allowed to drive like that down the pit lane? Is it advisable in these conditions?
I wouldn't, because a lot of people close by.
Exactly.
But I also don't get, to Jensen's point, weaving at 60 kilometers an hour isn't going to do anything for your tyre temperatures.
But it's slippy, especially if you get onto the concrete there. There's people around, and as good a driver as Daniel Ricciardo is, and he is, I'm not sure that the pit lane is the place to be doing that sort of thing.
I don't think so. I mean, even behind a safety car, in wet conditions, when they're going that slow, weaving doesn't really do anything. The only thing that really works to get tyre temperature or core tyre temperature is brakes.
Yeah.
So you hammer in the brakes as hard as you can.
Guess what? Race director has noted Daniel Ricciardo for a pit lane infringement. That doesn't surprise me, to be honest. I think that it'll be a fine if he's found guilty of anything.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that sort of thing should be encouraged. Poor old Pierre Gasly. Bit of a rotten weekend ahead of him. Started at the back. Now out of FP3.
Got the walk of shame.
Yeah.
He's a football fan, so maybe that can cheer him up. I don't know, are France still in the Euros? I should know this, shouldn't I?
Right.
I don't know anything about football.
See, and that doesn't surprise me at all. having seen
They won our penalties last night.
having seen your penalty skills, luckily the French were better.
Okay. Thanks for telling me.
England could get France in the final, couldn't they?
That's what he was saying on the F1 show, is it could be England-France, and obviously that is basically his team, isn't it? It's part English, part French.
All they've got to do is beat Spain, and all we've got to do is beat Switzerland, and then win a semi-final. I mean, what could be more simple than that? Turkey or Holland? I mean, come on, we're going to beat those in the semis. It's a Swiss game I worry about, to be honest. More importantly, I think that might be a bit of a slam dunk. You shouldn't have been doing that. And look, there's the Red Bull mechanics ready with their tyres. And Daniel is kind of weaving, approaching.
I mean, he's not going to lose control.
No, he's not, Jensen. But if he did, he's not going to lose control because of his ability, but the conditions might do something a bit weird that he can't recover from, and then there's people right there. That would be the way I think it's looked at. Green lights has just gone on at the end of the pit lane. We can get back underway, but this was Daniel Ricciardo a few moments ago coming into the pits, weaving from side to side. Look how close he is to those in the slow lane and in their pit boxes. And the RB driver has been noted by the race director for a pit lane infringement. Karun.
I'm just confused because he's coming into the pits to put the tyres in the blankets anyway. So,
And if you're struggling for temp that much, just get another set.
yeah.
A hot set.
So he said he's struggling with the aero balance on that RB, especially at the rear. Whether that had anything to do with what he was doing there, I do not know, but not sure you want to see drivers weaving at any stage like that down a pit lane when people are standing by and working. You know, it only takes one big puddle or one slippery spot, and then you've got a bit of an accident. So it's been noted. I'll tell you if it's been passed to the stewards or not. Oh, guess what? It has. And it will be investigated after the session. Just this second popped up as Max Verstappen comes out. How long do we lose with that red flag? Round about 6 minutes of running. But Pierre Gasly has walked back to the garage after his car went off at Vale. Ted, down to you.
Funnily, you mentioned Pierre Gasly, Crofty, because I'm just looking at him with his engineer at the moment. We can just see him down here checking the data, just figuring out exactly what went on. Listen, we know he has the engine penalty. He had to take it at some point. That doesn't mean he doesn't think he can get some points out start of this weekend. So needs to understand exactly what happened and will be ruining the lost track time. I'm seeing everybody out in more or less used intermediates. I'd be surprised at this point if anybody takes a new intermediate. It is only a practice session. They will need them for the rest of the day. And all the drivers were saying, look, as soon as we get back to the pits, please can you put these intermediates into blankets? They're losing tyre temperature quite quickly. So, I mean, listen, we're not here to make excuses for Daniel Ricciardo. I have seen him sort of leave the pits in a rather exuberant way in various pit lanes of the world, but that's a different thing from what he was doing earlier. But I think he's probably just trying to keep some temperature in the tyres.
Thanks ever so much, Ted. Right, rain coming. Clouds forming overhead. What's going on in the Ferrari garage there, I wonder?
That was a setup change or just putting the bodywork back on after something.
And out comes Nico Hülkenberg into the pit lane too. It is a day very much to wrap up warm. I'm not expecting it to get much warmer than this either. So what can they do in terms of setup on the cars, Karun, to try and help the drivers generate more temperature?
There are things you can do, you know, in terms of the camber and things like that. But you have to have one eye on the Grand Prix tomorrow. If it's going to be dry, you don't want to deviate away too much from the dry setup. And this is a track where you can overtake. You know, I don't think grid position and qualifying position is as important here as it was in Barcelona, for example. So I think it's, you know, I think you really have to think about the Grand Prix and hope that your forecast for the Grand Prix is going to be right and get the setup there.
I should know this, but for changing conditions, are you allowed brake tape?
I should also know the answer to this, but I think you can, because to avoid the glazing of the brake disc. So to maybe explain to people at home, if the brakes...
I mean, the track is definitely drying a bit now.
Just to finish up on the point, so these carbon brakes that you have in Formula 1 cars only operate above 400 degrees Celsius. So if the brakes are too cold, or below that threshold, you get an effect called glazing, where it basically becomes like a shiny mirror, and you don't get the retardation, you don't get the bite. So what Jensen was saying there, there was a brake tape, is to control the amount of air and cooling going in there, and to bring that temperature threshold up.
To the pit wall, the McLaren pit wall, their CEO Zach Brown is with us on this marvellous Saturday at Silverstone. It was a fabulous Friday as well, Zach. Your team looked pretty much on form this weekend.
So far, so good. Just a little bit cold here on pit wall.
You'll get used to it, I promise.
Zach, what's the forecast for the race tomorrow? Because we were just speculating on what teams and drivers will do now, right? As you go into Parc Fermé, do you start to change the car for the wet conditions and focus on qualifying, or do you think it's still going to be dry potentially tomorrow and stick to your dry setup?
Don't know yet. Ultimately, we think a little bit more rain is coming here imminently, probably 10 minutes. It's supposed to be dry this afternoon with lots of wind, and then tomorrow looks a bit iffy. So we'll leave that one for the engineers to decide when we get a little bit more visibility into what we think the weather's going to be.
Hey, Zach, it's Jensen. So you guys seem to have got the balance spot on for the dry conditions, or pretty much there or thereabouts. How is the circuit out there? Have you had much feedback from the drivers? Because it looks, from here, it looks unbelievably slippery.
Very slippery, and the guys aren't extremely happy with the race car at the moment. They think it snaps a bit on them, especially when you get into some heavier wind conditions, which I think we're going to have later on. But as they said, everyone else must be experiencing the same challenges given the lap times we've been able to put down. So we feel like we'll be very competitive here, but I think so will 3 other teams at least.
with that in mind, Zach, the track temperature only down at 16 degrees Celsius. Is it a case of just filling the car up with a bit more fuel, let the drivers keep going to get temperature and build confidence?
A little bit of that, but you know, these Grand Prix drivers don't need many laps to get pretty acclimated to conditions. So there's a little bit of element of let's get some extra running in, but they'll be working on what they think's the best way to set up the car. They're pretty comfortable pretty quickly.
Zach, thanks ever so much. Great to have you with us this weekend. We'll talk to you in a little while time. Valtteri Bottas has just had a spin, just reporting that there is no grip out there, but Charles Leclerc is finding a bit more than most. 0.8 of a second clear of Max Verstappen currently. Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris just about a second adrift, and then Yuki Tsunoda, who seems to be thrilling in these and loving these conditions too. His only point at Silverstone, a 10th here last year, but don't discount Yuki Tsunoda out. Did win an F2 sprint race in his junior career here. Charles Leclerc started his Formula One track career at Silverstone, an FP1 session for Haas back in 2016, and we can ride on board with him now. Down the old pit straight and into Copse. How fast can he take this? It's not flat today, Jensen, not by a long shot.
Yeah, it's a long way from flat, isn't it? A little bit of understeer in the car there, not so bad in the wet conditions. I was surprised how much curve he's been taking in these conditions as well, because obviously a little bit slippery on the curve, doesn't settle the car. But no, his balance doesn't seem too bad now. He's got a bit of tyre temperature. It's a bit of understeer, but the rear is pretty stable, which is nice. Down the hanger straight. Oh, look at that. Almost the top of 7th. Down 2 gears, 5th. You don't need to use the apex in the wet, even in the dry, through snow. And now braking for the slow left-hander. This is so tricky in these conditions. He's short shifted up the box there. You'll hear another short shift. Oh, with a massive snap of oversteer. Yeah, that would have taken a little bit by surprise there, but good catch.
Yeah, that focuses the attention somewhat, goes a bit faster. But then Max Verstappen, who is just ahead of Charles Leclerc, is quicker by nearly a 10th of a second. We'll watch this once more. Lewis Hamilton will be coming across the line very shortly, and he's on an absolute flyer, currently purple in both first and second sector. Lovely slow motion replays. It all looks so much smoother at normal speed.
It does.
Jensen, what do you think about, drivers like Lewis or Lando, George, who've driven at Silverstone through their formative years and have a lot of experience of the wet lines and finding the grip? It's got to have some sort of an advantage, hasn't it?
I don't know. It's changed over the years so much with the different asphalt that we've had here in the past. Now it does seem a lot slipperier. It's a lot smoother, but it's a much slipperier asphalt. So no, I don't think it really helps them so much. Being British, they've probably dealt with more wet weather than most, so they've experienced a bit of everything, I guess. But Lewis has always been exceptional in the wet, and obviously very special win for him back in 2008 here in the wet.
Oh, absolutely. His brother Nicholas looking very happy because Lewis Hamilton just has gone 0.7 of a second clear of Max Verstappen. I said he was on a bit of a flyer. Esteban Ocon goes into the top 10 or top 9 for Alpine. Here's Oscar Piastri making his way through Maggots and Beckett's. Thank you very much to the person who's put the corner names on your screen. When we have names, we should use them at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw some comments yesterday from some people saying, oh, the commentators really are obsessed with the corner names. Yes, we are.
Because we like them.
Yes,
because we know them. One of the early circuits for me.
And Anthony Davidson is not here to be calling Stowe turn 15, so we're going to embrace that.
That dry line George Russell was talking about, it's there, but for not much of this lap. Down Brooklands Luffield Woodcuts as Oscar Piastri goes second fastest, and that you often get here, Jensen. Dry in one part, wet in another.
Yeah, you do. It is pretty stable in terms of, it seems to be pretty consistent around the lap for now. But then the higher speed corners, you might get the circuit drying a bit more, because these things are like hoovers with the amount of downforce they have and the ground effect, so you might get a much drier line at higher speed.
Slow speed corner, the Vale chicane for George Russell. Charles Leclerc goes fastest in the first sector on his latest lap. Russell crosses the line, goes second fastest by 0.2. Maybe started generating a bit more of that tyre temperature in the latter stages. Yeah,
it seems to be working the tyre now, which is good to see. The cars, the drivers are actually able to push the cars a little bit more to the limit, which is nice. They're struggling on that second to last corner, aren't they? Getting the power down, big drifts, which look really cool. Just frustrating as a driver.
The thing is, now you're chasing the track. It's just constantly improving. So the lap times are somewhat irrelevant because it's just changing so quickly at this stage. It's just about trying to get
I mean, they're all driving around the same track, though.
No, but what I mean is that as a driver, in terms of this session, the importance of the lap time is less so. It's just about, because if you've done the time a minute before other people, that in itself could be like 7-8 tenths, right?
I think what Prix is trying to suggest that the lap times are improving by so much. Every time you go out for a new push lap, if you're in one of the competitive cars, you are likely to go faster.
Well, it's good practice for qualifying if it's wet, then, isn't it? Because you want to time it correctly so you're the last one across the line. But no, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. But I think in terms of getting the feel for it, yeah, the lap time isn't so important. It's more understanding what lines are best. You're right, Karun.
But for us, we love a lap time, and this should be Lewis Hamilton as Alonso goes 10th, going back to being the fastest once more, and it is by just under 2 tenths from Charles Leclerc. Down to you, Ted.
Okay, practice. And talking of practice, George Russell is, well, he's practicing his wet lines around Silverstone. Of course, Lewis Hamilton pretty much the king of that with Max Verstappen around here. But his engineer, Russell's engineer, noted that Lando was taking a wider line through, he would only call it turn 6 and 7, Crofty, so you can translate the corner names based on what you were just saying.
Brooklands and Luffield.
There you go.
Definitely took a wider line there.
As Lando goes very wide, yes.
But yeah, I mean, gents, you know, Karun, how much do you want your engineer telling you what other drivers are doing with wet condition lines and whether they're finding grip or not? I would imagine it's quite useful, no?
Well, yeah, I think so.
I think so. Well, if he's quick, yeah, definitely. I don't know if they can judge this quickly whether he's getting an advantage in that sector of the track or not.
Yeah, yes, I think the inference, sorry Crofty, I think the inference of course was from Mercedes that they've done all those computations and GPS traces, and yeah, Norris was gaining something by using that line through 5 and 6, and Russell should give it a go.
Yeah, that'll come from all the people watching back at base in the factory, because they've got 20 people in these mission control rooms who are all just watching 20 different screens and listening to the different radios and feeding back comments to the factory. Up in race control, I'm currently watching Norris and Russell on 2 screens side by side. Helpfully, they're only about 10-15 seconds apart on the track.
Great for you. Our viewers are watching Lance Stroll. No. So we have no control over that.
I'm sorry, I can't fix that. But what I can tell you is that Norris has, I think, changed his line. He is taking the wider line through Brooklands and Luffield, so give their feedback.
It's funny actually in these conditions, the lap time difference from P1 to P19 is massive compared to the dry, and I think it just shows you the cars and the drivers that are able to switch on those tyres, because there's a 5-second difference from first to P18.
Yeah, but even from first to fourth is nearly a second. Well, see, Norris just popped up, but first to fifth being nearly a second. That is absolutely what you just said. Yeah. It's the difference between somebody's tyres being 5 degrees hotter and suddenly in a working window.
And we're about 12 seconds slower than we were yesterday with the fastest time too. I've quite enjoyed this lap, not just because it's Lance Stroll who goes 10th fastest, but that gyroscopic camera is brilliant. And for riding on board a car at Silverstone, you know, to go with the flow, and you really do get a sense of the rhythm that's needed to conquer this track.
Makes it look too easy, though. the quality is too good.
You made it look too easy for many years.
The quality is so good with the cameras now, and how it takes out all the bumps and what have you. It's unreal. But yeah, I like the helmet cams where it's just violence. You know, you see the violence that the driver is going through, because it's so aggressive. Every track, especially a circuit that's so high speed here with the buffeting and everything. Whoa. That looked like he was going left.
It could so easily have gripped and sent him left at that point.
Got to be so careful. Leclerc goes quickest by nearly 6/100ths of a second, but Hamilton is going quicker still on this lap. We're watching Carlos Sainz at the moment. He did a 31.4 for the first sector. Hamilton did a 31.2. We'll find out where Sainz is in the middle sector in just a few moments as he exits Chapel, and he's put in a 40-second dead. Hamilton was half a second clear, and he's gone nearly 4 tenths faster than Sainz's teammate Charles Leclerc. Still puddles out there, still spray from the cars. It's still not completely dry through Stowe and into Vale. And You almost get the feeling the car wants to go sideways when Sainz puts the brakes on there.
Yeah, the issue we're going to have soon is we have 30 minutes to go. Little snap out the last corner there. That would have been a little bit scary. Such high speed at that point. But the issue we're going to have is that the circuit is drying up. What do? Do they just stay out there so they're drying the track for dry tyres later? We might have a moment where we're having most cars in the pits, which would be a shame.
And turn 12, you can use more apex curb.
The radio. I was in the middle of 7.
Copy.
So turn 7 being Luffield, and not a good time to be on the radio at all. Did you used to sit down when Andrew Shovlin was your engineer and say, right, where are you going to talk to me around the track? Did you two plan it out beforehand?
Well, normally it was quite easy. The straight bits. You talk to me on the straight bits. Don't talk to me in the corners. I mean, yeah, when something that loud comes on the radio, it's a shock to the system.
Yeah.
And already the concentration is so high on trying to keep the car on the track in these conditions. So yeah, definitely don't talk to me in the corners. But the thing is, now with the racing that I do in like Le Mans, they talk to you everywhere. Everywhere, every single corner. And it's like, ah! But a lot of these guys are used to it. A lot of them race in sims.
And a weather update for you. The rain might get worse in 15 minutes' time.
Or it might not.
Yes.
It's Silverstone. We're not quite sure on that one. The teams will have spotters that are located from where out and about where the weather is coming in from. And I don't know if it is raining or not out there. I can't see any rain out of the commentary box window, but the rain that was coming in 4 minutes I don't think did arrive.
No.
And that's not a bad thing at all. And now we've got that dry line on the Wellington Straight into Luffield and Brooklands. We've also got Maggots, Beckett's down the Hanger Straight and into Stowe is becoming a drier line as well. And George Russell is putting that to good use by setting some decent sector times. Karun.
I've got my nose by the window, Prof. And it's not raining. I can tell you that. So at least where we are, it doesn't mean it's not raining at the other part of the track, because actually the wind has changed direction a little bit from yesterday, wasn't it? Yesterday it was coming up from Club Corner as Russell has now gone to the top time.
Up by half a second.
Yeah, well. Yesterday the grain clouds seem to be coming up from Club Corner. It's gone a little bit more across now, so coming from Luffield, it seems.
And it is a very stiff breeze as well. That was a decent time there from George Russell, albeit with the track that little bit drier.
It's definitely not dry though on the Hanger Straight. That stuff out the back of the car, that's spray, not smoke.
But here's interesting. Hamilton, now on his latest push lap, gone about 0.4 of a second quicker than Russell did in the middle sector. There's something about Lewis in these conditions that just makes me think today could be one of his more favoured days at a racetrack. Loves it here, loves it in these conditions, and let's keep that gap to about 3/100ths of a second and have a brilliant tussle one way or the other between the two Mercedes drivers.
You're never going to bet against Lewis in the wet, are you? You know, I think there's in the dry yesterday, he again seemed a little bit shy of George's pace when we looked at similar times of the session and fuel the tyres and stuff. So. But yeah, in the wet, you'll never bet against him, especially around here.
Did you learn from Lewis in the wet when you were teammates? Did he learn from you? Did you share much data at all?
I guess you always learn from your teammate, whether. Yeah, I mean, whoever it is, they always have their strengths in certain conditions. And Lewis was always good in the wet, but that was something that I enjoyed as well. Yeah.
But that's why I kind of asked the question, because you were both, those conditions, you both shone through.
Yeah.
So did you find things you could learn from him? Did he find things he could learn from you?
The problem is it is all a little bit down to style as well of driving, and we had very different styles in terms of brake application, throttle, steering. So in real wet conditions, he was quicker. And then in the intermediate conditions, when it's going from sort of dries to wets or wets to dries, that was an area that I was quicker with my style of driving. You know, he's very aggressive and quite analog with his application of the throttle and brake.
Yeah.
But he does all of it through the steering wheel. Right. So you'll see him fighting the steering wheel more than what I did. I was more progressive with throttle and brake and modulating through the pedals.
Yep.
All the work for me, all the movement was done through the pedals, and the steering wheel nothing. So a completely different way around, and it works for him probably more than it worked for me. And I think the wet conditions, it worked very well, and the dry, it definitely does.
Is that it kind of sounds like you were more planned in your precision. You knew what you were going to do before you did it. Lewis relies on instinct a bit more.
No, I was relying on feel in that moment in time.
Okay.
And I think that's why the intermediate conditions were good. So that's modulating the brake, modulating the throttle, trying to feel what I'm doing. Whereas he would just come in, bang on the brakes as hard as he could, and then apply the throttle always in the same way. And then if he had oversteer, he would control it through the steering wheel, counter steering, and that really worked for him. So yeah, very different. Worked for both of us, but his style probably works a little bit better.
Cheers, Jensen. Enjoyed that. Pierre Gasly not enjoying this session at all. If you weren't with us after about 10 minutes, I'll bring you up to date. He went off in the slippy, greasy conditions at Vale, got the car beached, and that is his session over. Nico Hulkenberg is in the top 9. And ahead of him, Perez, Piastri, Verstappen and Sainz, Leclerc, Norris, Hamilton and Russell. 3 British drivers in the top 3. Stop the count, as they might say on that one. I'm reminded as we watch Max Verstappen here that you and Lewis, Hungary 2011, had a mega wet-dry battle, and the lead swapped 8 times during that race before you finally won out.
Yeah, it came down to the pit stops basically. I think Lewis ended up putting on wet tires, and I was like, no, I'll stay on what I have, thank you. And that's what won it for me. But no, it was always a challenge up against Lewis in those conditions, but an exciting one as well, and such good memories.
Love it.
Lovely to see the crowd out there.
Yeah.
You know, it's so cold, but massive smiles on their faces. As you said, probably because we have 3 Brits in the top 3.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I feel sorry for today? Mr. Whippy. No one's buying an ice cream anywhere near this place today. He's brought his tea urn along, the ice cream man.
Well, the hot chocolate man's probably doing quite well today, isn't he?
The only positive is it's not going to melt. You know, when it runs down your fingers and it's, it's a mess, isn't it?
Sticky and horrible.
Yeah.
Is Max Verstappen enjoying this? Look at the vortices coming off that rear wing, which is always fun to see. Unless you're an aerodynamicist trying to disguise that, of course. Down towards Vale. By no means the fastest lap we've had so far from Verstappen. Did you feel that Red Bull was sandbagging a bit yesterday in the dry?
I think so. I think in terms of headline pace they were. I think in the long run averages they were in the hunt, were they? Very comparable with.
Yeah, I mean he was beaten by Lando Norris on the medium tyre. Yeah,
but not by much, was it? It was only within hundreds.
Yeah.
So you know you're talking 600. So they basically what my point is he was a match. But then when we looked on the sky pad, of course, we noticed that Verstappen was on a better lap till he went off at Beckett's.
Okay.
So I think the headline time suggested that he wasn't there.
Just speaking to a couple of teams, his strength was high speed yesterday.
Yeah, which is you saw on the sky pad.
And watching the car now over the curbs, you would say that car is extremely stiff, which would, you know, the reason why you'd make it stiff is because you can run it as low as you can for those high-speed corners, and the aero is completely stable, and you get as maximum downforce out of it as possible.
And a stiff car also energizes the tire, doesn't it? It puts the energy, because of the absorption goes into the tire, it energizes the tire. So when you've got these low temperatures, it will help to just create a bit of heat into the tire as well.
Yuki Tsunoda continuing on his way, currently 17th fastest, but this will be a personal best for Tsunoda, who now just feels like it's an impossibly long series between the Vale chicane and the exit of Club, the final turn, before he can get the power down again. 12th fastest for him, tucks in behind Alex Albon and Logan Sargent, for which the rumours continue that he may or may not see out the season for Williams. 21 minutes to go. The top 3, Russell, Hamilton and Norris.
Okay, Daniel, as expected, it's starting to rain. It's level 1, and we expect level 2 in around 5 minutes.
Max Max Verstappen then, just a few moments ago on his way through Stowe, came out to do another push lap. The rain, I think, starting to intensify a little bit, starting to come down. We might see some wet tyre running rather than the intermediates before the end of this session. And that looked like a solid lap from Max, although he arrived at a couple of corners going sideways, but under control, Jensen. It wasn't, though, the fastest we'll ever see from Max Verstappen. Fifth fastest behind George Russell, difference of about 0.8 of a second there. So have Red Bull, are Red Bull still just taking it easy and just then leading up to qualifying where they can put a lot more into it? Is this safety first from Max Verstappen?
No, looking at that. No, I think it's very difficult to get the tyre working on the first lap in these conditions to get it exactly where you want it to be. It's a lot easier on a dry tyre than what they have to do on the out laps. So I think getting it working is tricky. So maybe a slow lap now and then we'll see what he can really do out there. But it's starting to spit as well.
It is. So there's Max Verstappen and his lap. Let's just hear what RB is saying to Daniel Ricciardo.
As expected, it's starting to rain. It's level 1, and we expect level 2 in around 5 minutes.
Daniel Ricciardo, who's got to go and see the stewards, might need a brolly after the end of this session for a pit lane infringement where he was weaving in the fast lane of the pit lane, riding on board and now off board. I mean, it's getting trickier, but it's still not too treacherous.
Yeah. Well, it's not. There's no standing water or anything yet, so yeah, this is a good time to run because it's pretty consistent, right? So hopefully they can actually do some testing rather than just seeing the times tumble.
Well, they're not going to tumble, I'm afraid, on this particular lap with Daniel Ricciardo. We'll head down to Ted.
No, they're certainly not, and not for other drivers as well, and that is particularly annoying for those who have just taken out some fuel, Crofty. So quite a few of the teams, I think Red Bull, Sergio Perez has just taken out some fuel. RB, they've both taken out some fuel and are going for quicker runs as they prepare for qualifying. And what a qualifying session this is going to be if these conditions keep up like this. Just to put that engineer speak into real terms that you can understand, Crofty, level 1 is sort of spitting with rain that you probably wouldn't even bother putting your umbrella up for. But level 2 is what I like to call plinky plonky rain, Crofty. Yes, it's the return of the plinky plonky rain. It wets your glasses. You need to put an umbrella up, put your coat on. It's properly raining. Not chucking it down, but properly raining here.
The stuff what gets you wet. The clouds very low, as you can see from the helicopter shot. There's so many tents, so many people camping out. I hope you all got a good night's sleep last night, but the storm woke me up, and I was at home. It was proper violent, rain last night.
Yeah, the storm definitely woke me up, mainly because it woke my 2-year-old up, who then proceeded to punch me in the face.
Really?
As he rolled over in a flap of what the thunder was.
So I was camping here. And it wasn't the storm that woke me up, but it was Stormzy that kept me awake.
Ah, excellent.
Martin Brundle's new friend.
I was about to say Stormzy and Martin Brundle. It was the collaboration last night. You can see this as part of our coverage this weekend. Stormzy in conversation with Martin Brundle, two massive F1 fans, talking about their love of their sport. And honestly, it's a brilliant chat that was had. A lot of respect on both sides.
Yeah.
Martin's a secret grime lover as well.
Is he?
He certainly is.
Wow. Learn something every day.
Yeah.
Knows all the words, trust me. So there's the rain on the lens of the camera. Esteban Ocon just set a personal best through the first sector on his latest lap. A lot of cars in the garage currently, but George Russell and Lewis Hamilton have just come out, but producing nowhere near the first sectors that they were doing about 10 minutes or so ago. Just shows the conditions are getting, as Ted said, a bit more plinky-plonky now.
But yeah, but a lot more useful running, I would say, with the plinky-plonky rain.
Yeah. But we all know what he means.
Exactly. These are such cool slow-mos. Look at the front wing, the amount of movement there is on that front wing.
Yeah, and a front wing where Mercedes kind of caught up with the joined-up thinking that the other leading teams were running. They have abandoned that lone concept and a more traditional current front wing, if that makes sense.
For people that don't know, you see there's a lot of movement on the front wing, and the reason for that is the higher the speed, it backs off, so you have more straight line speed, and it's a lot more efficient in a straight line. Hit the brakes, it lifts up, so you get that front downforce in the lower speed corners. But it's tricky because you have to get the balance right with low speed and high speed corners, which is always very difficult. So you kind of try and choose a point of when it's going to start backing off within the regulations as well, because there's only allowed to back off a certain amount.
Exactly. Talking of low and high speed, there's a lot of high speed corners here. Do you prioritize in your setup the high speed corners and therefore sacrificing on the straights? But does that then make you vulnerable during the race to being overtaken?
Well, yeah, sorry, I thought you were going to say compromise, or which one would you choose, high speed or low speed corners? It would be high speed corners, but you have to take into account the efficiencies of the straight line speed. So these days you wouldn't run full downforce here. You wouldn't choose to, because you might be able to take cops flat, but you're entering the corner at a lower speed, and you will exit the corner at a lower speed as well. So you want to back it off until you can just about take cops flat, and that's the perfect scenario.
Right. And therefore, so the driver's giving you that feeling of when it's the right time, because the driver will know when you could just about take it flat. Exactly, exactly.
And running the car in the ground is always the better way, without hitting the ground too much on the straight, because again that causes drag.
Right.
So it's a real always a massive compromise with an F1 car. But you definitely will go for straight high-speed corners over low-speed here, and then you just got to deal with these low-speed corners. It's tricky because it's aggressive in high-speed. Low-speed, you are taking it. You're not taking it easy, but you're being so careful not to lock a tire or not to damage the rears on exits.
And I think with the low-speed corners these days, with these cars being so big, fundamentally you're chasing the front.
Yeah.
The Formula 1 cars nowadays always understeer in the slow speed. Look at the amount of steer, he's just waiting. And that kind of gets exaggerated in the wet. They're waiting even more. But eventually they've got so much steering lock on, when they pick up the power, it grips and it snaps into an oversteer. So it is a big challenge for the drivers. Esteban Ocon, by the way, Coffee, I spoke to him this morning.
Yeah.
When he was walking to the paddock and saying, how did it go? He said, well, FP1 was okay. Then we put some new bits on the car in FP2 and it didn't really work. So they've had to go back on the parts that they were testing out. Which
is the rain, just expect the standing water to be increasing a little bit more.
I'm loving this on board with Esteban Ocon, just having a little listen to the wheel spin that he's getting at times.
Oh, he's locked up.
Oh, and he has locked up there. Don't go into the gravel. That's what did for your teammate in this session. Well done, Esteban. Kept it on the tarmac.
I love in these conditions, they're still doing 115 miles an hour minimum speed through Stowe. That's quick.
Yeah.
That is seriously quick.
It certainly is. Just before that lockup, his engineers have been on the radio to say you're the only car that's improving in the first and second sectors. You're doing really well. Maybe just improving it a little bit too much on that. We can hear and see what it looked like on board. Oh, what a mini lockup there. It's like, am I going to stop in time? Luckily, he did. Well done, Esteban Ocon. DNF for him at the last two British Grand Prix. But he did have a 100% point-scoring record in his first 5 races at Silverstone. Hasn't been out-qualified by a teammate since 2018. I dare say that run will carry on today with his teammate Pierre Gasly, starting from the back of the grid through no fault of his own by taking on extra engine power units elements. So we've only got Norris, Sainz, Verstappen, Perez, Hulkenberg, Albon, Sargent, Tsunoda, Alonso, Stroll, Magnussen in the pit lane currently. Gasly obviously out of this session. It was on his second lap when he came off the track. And Lewis Hamilton, the 31.4 for the first sector, so still 4/10 off the best first sector we've had so far, just to show how conditions have started to slow down again.
Yeah, the edge has gone off the track, isn't it, in terms of pure lap time. But I think Jensen's point earlier is really valid, which is it's more consistent conditions now. So if you actually want to lean towards a wet setup, then this is a good chance to test it back to back and try some different things. Because also, Crofty, one of the other things you have to think about is you'll change to wet settings for the electronics on the cars. That includes the brake-by-wire system, includes the differentials, includes the engine braking systems, the recovery system. So there's a whole load of parameters. And often when you just change one switch on the steering wheel to go from the dry to the wet tires, it changes the whole range of stuff in one click. So, but then within that, there's fine-tuning to do. So when we talk about setup, yeah, there's mechanical stuff. As George, what a snap of oversteer at the final corner. But yeah, there's a whole lot of electronic stuff that you need to tune in as well.
And he gets that snap of oversteer because he just hits a bit where the car grips up more than he would have expected, and maybe more than he would have got on the previous lap.
No, he would have got less grip.
That's
exactly what. Yeah, so he's hit either the white line or he's just got a little bit aggressive on the throttle.
I think it's the white line he's touched just coming out of that final apex. There's a little bit of off camber in the road as to when you come over that crest, and the rear of the car is already got, you know, is tending to go that way even in the dry. And then if you get the white line and the camber on the road, it just snaps to the...
He's also just about to start his lap, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So he's like, I really want to get a good exit here.
When are you heading out on the track again?
Not today, unfortunately, because everything was so delayed this morning and wet. We got cancelled.
Jensen got cancelled.
Yeah.
No.
But tomorrow morning I'll be out in the dry. Hopefully in the dry tomorrow. You can hear the V10 scream.
Love it.
The FW22.
Well, you'll be around post this session then when we talk to Mike Crack, the Aston Martin team principal. With the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll, currently on the circuit, 14th fastest.
So Stroll's stronger in the low-speed corners.
Yeah.
There are only 3 of here, which is a slight challenge for him.
He needs to up the ratio a touch.
Although, in terms of pure lap time, there's only 100th between them.
Yeah.
So, or 200th between them. So, he's actually come back at Fernando a bit, hasn't he, in recent run of form? In the last half dozen races, it feels like he's certainly got closer to Fernando, and if anything, he's actually out-qualified him a few times.
Yeah, he's got closer than he did last year. It still trails Alonso 41.17, I think it is, at points this season. But he had a good run around kind of Monaco, Canada, Spain, I think, of out-qualifying Alonso or getting a bit nearer to him. But Aston Martin just not scoring the points at the moment that they were this time last year. In fact, it was kind of from the halfway point last year that they started to tail off just a little bit. And they've not really recovered that since.
He's also, he likes the wet, doesn't he? He's competitive in the wet.
Yeah. Yeah, that pole position he took in Turkey, wasn't it? In the unbelievably low grip conditions.
If you remember, when the 2 Rebels got sent to the back of the grid for power unit penalties, he became the youngest ever front row sitter. Monza in the wet one year, and if you remember even further back than that, in F3 at Spa, he had an excellent weekend in the wet in that year. All those names, by the way, are the people involved at Williams in working for the company and putting it together and providing the inspiration and setting the company up in the first place. So Frank Williams proudly displayed on the side of the car.
Did I read that there's 1,009 names?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is yours on there?
I wonder if it is, actually. I'm going to go and have a look.
Well, it should be.
Yeah. And yours?
Heritage.
I'm Heritage, so I'm not, on race team.
I'll check on the FW22.
Yeah, check on that car.
There's a bit that says Karun was here.
Exactly.
Or he defeated it. Ted, down to you.
And then there's the fantastic Alex Albon Pets helmet design, Crofty.
Another one.
Come on, after the Panda, you've got to love the Moo and the rest, the Albon Pets. Anyway,
how many cats, Ted? How many cats?
How many cats has he got, or how many are on the helmet? I can only spot 2. One's in a pink Formula 1 car. But Alex Albon and Logan Sargent taking this weather as an opportunity, and there's a great fight at the moment. I think they're 9th Hulkenberg, 10th and 11th Williams cars. Tell me if that's changed. But yeah, a good opportunity, not having the issues that both of them have, although less so Hulkenberg has been going pretty well around here in the dry. But yeah, Williams' drawbacks of their car not so evident in the wet. It looks like they've got good mechanical grip and keep those tyres nice and hot. And yeah, Logan Sargent and Alex Albon showing a good turn of speed in these conditions. You just heard in the background, Alex Albon, pet helmet and all, have just gone out again. Nico Hulkenberg he's sort of lurking at the back of his Haas car. It looks like he is going out. Actually, he's just now stepped into the car before while they were just changing something. So yeah, it looks like we're going to get not only for the practice starts at the end of the session, one final go before we go into qualifying. Oh, wet qualifying, Crofty. Yes, come on.
Have some of that. Carlos Sainz, we're getting a good view from the front wing of his Ferrari. 4.5 seconds off the pace. I assume if these are conditions that could be representative of a race tomorrow, you fill it with fuel, do a few race sims on the intermediate tyres. It would make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you would say that's probably what they're doing. That's a long way off. I know the circuit's changed a little bit, but not 4 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, they're all into the early 40s now, aren't they? You know, we're seeing they're all like 42s and 41s now, so I think there's a combination of fuel and circuit.
Quite a bit of understeer in the car in the apex, pushed him wide, and then big old snap.
Yeah, it was a bit. Oh, someone's gone a little bit shy at the back of the Aston Martin garage. Doesn't want to be on camera.
I mean, you know, different strokes for different folks. Some people like to hide, and some people like you, Crofty, are front and centre.
Oh, no, you just need my voice, mate. That's all you need. Right, Fernando Alonso. Is Fernando Alonso a man for conditions like this today? A driver in the rain? If we talk about Lance Stroll fine in the wet. Is that Alonso's bag as well?
I don't think there's a condition he's not really good in. I think, yeah.
No, exactly that. We've seen in so many different eras of Formula One as well, the wet. He's been good. You know, that day in Budapest when Jensen won his first race, Fernando was right in the hunt till the wheel nut fell off, wasn't it? He was leading the race till the wheel nut fell off in those conditions. So we've seen it in other occasions as well. That I think also his aggressive style is helpful in terms of inducing front tire temperature. And on a day like this, that will be helpful.
26th fastest lap of his career last time out in Austria, as they put some softs on at the end just to take a point of somebody else. By the way, this is the 21st time he's raced at Silverstone in Formula One. Fernando Alonso, and he went away for a bit as well, and then came back. Talking of going away, you are free to head to the warmth of the paddock. I know you don't want to because it's really cozy up here.
It's really nice. I'm falling asleep, it's so warm. That's your dulcet tones, Crofty.
Until come back, I'll read you a bedtime story later.
See you later.
Cheers, my friend.
Bye.
Lewis Hamilton was reading bedtime stories or children's stories.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which is marvellous.
Yeah,
love that. Right, so what's the story of this session? All the action really happened in the first half an hour in terms of improving times. But, you know, as a reward, Karun, for getting to Silverstone and suffering the worst conditions at the racetrack, the British fans, in the majority, are going to love a top 3 of Brits, aren't they?
A top 3 of Brits, and all within less than 0.2 of a second. So, yeah, very, very positive for them. I think that when we get to qualifying, you know, carrying this, as I said before, the actual lap times position may not matter in terms of this session, but all they're doing in this session is learning for qualifying. And they will carry confidence, knowing that you have got a car that's up there and competitive, and you've got confidence to lean on the tyre and energize the tyre in these conditions, will give you confidence heading into a wet qualifying this afternoon.
And you've got to remember here as well, and this is pertinent as Lewis Hamilton comes out of the garage, or sorry, goes into the garage and we can see him, got to be in it to win it. You know, you never give up on a qualifying lap at Silverstone, because you do get drier parts, wetter parts of the track, and things could change around in the final sector. As Hamilton then, I assume, will not be coming back out again to take a practice start. I wonder how many will take a practice start today.
Yeah, I was surprised how few of them did a wet practice start yesterday, actually. There's only, I think, 9 cars who came out, and bearing in mind that, you know, everyone's been saying all weekend, the weather forecast is iffy even for Sunday. I'm surprised they're not coming out to do a wet practice start, actually. And
this is their last chance.
Yeah, but let's see in this session if I mean, Hamilton can still come back out. he's going to have to get on with it because there's only 45 seconds to go. But yeah, if I was a driver on the track now, I would want to stay out and do the practice start because I think it's super critical.
Makes sense to me. Lando Norris was fastest in FP1 and FP2 yesterday. The man has been driver of the day on 6 occasions in 2024 and looking for another great weekend at his home race. Was runner-up last year after starting on the front row alongside Max Verstappen. George Russell, who at Silverstone has a best finish of 5th, but arrives on a high after victory in Austria. The gap between himself and Oscar Piastri to just 1 point in the championship, and Lewis Hamilton, a record 8-time winner at Silverstone, and pole sitter too in terms of the most poles, 7 of them here. So down the main straight there, Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris getting a little bit closer to each other, and that is the checkered flag. And right at the end, Lance Stroll on a fastest lap. He's just making his way around the final corner now. Might just move himself up a bit if he can. No, stays 12th fastest. Greatest of all time, Lewis Hamilton. Statistically, there is no doubt more wins and more poles, more podiums than anyone else, but 945 days since his last win. It's a long time. 945 days tomorrow since Lewis Hamilton last stood on top of a podium. It seems incredible.
It is incredible. I mean, if you think about the man, he was a winning machine from the day he arrived in the sport, isn't it? That run of 9 podiums on debut, and famous first win in Canada, followed up by Indianapolis. And then he just carried on winning. Even when the car, 2009, for example, the McLaren wasn't a great car, he still won in Budapest. Still should have won possibly in Singapore, possibly in Abu Dhabi. So yeah, it's very odd to look at the stat sheets and realize he's not won a race in that long.
Are we racing now? Just Lando Norris and George Russell actually practicing some racing.
Bit of fun at the end. Yeah, bit of friendly fun for the crowd.
The two drivers who both make their 116th Grand Prix start this weekend, and loving the home comforts, the home feeling of a home Grand Prix. That rain, the last few moments, has got steadily worse and worse. I dare say, if there were 10 minutes or so to go in this session, they'd have stuck a set of the wet tyres on by the end of it. But these two are going to go and do a practice start. Everyone's out there actually by Pierre Gasly, so they have crew all come out to come and do a practice start.
Parked up just outside our commentary box window, which is somewhat helpful to actually watch the launch. As
Oscar Piastri's got the pole spot.
Yeah, but it's slightly odd that both McLarens have chosen to start from the left-hand side. Normally teams try and get their drivers to split left and right. I could see the Astons, for example, Alonso's going left and Stroll right, and that's normally what the teams ask the drivers to do to get data on both sides of the track.
Alex Albon trying to light up the tyres just a little bit, but we'll leave the drivers to their practice starts. That is it for practice, ladies and gentlemen, and it's George Russell, race winner last time out, who was fastest on the intermediate tyres in the wet and damp conditions here on this Saturday lunchtime by 3/100ths of a second from his Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton, with Lando Norris less than 2/10 back, 3rd fastest. Sainz for Ferrari, Verstappen for Red Bull completing the top 5. Then comes Leclerc, Piastri, Alonso into the top 8. Perez and Hülkenberg was lurking in that top 10 throughout the session. Plenty of laps on the board for everyone except Pierre Gasly. Didn't set a time on his 2nd lap, went off into the gravel at the Vale chicane, and that was the end of his session. He'll start from the back of the grid anyway. He's lost a lot of track time in conditions that might be replicated on Sunday for the race, but they definitely look like we're going to see him again next time we go out, and that'll be qualifying.